Hey, it is easy to be lured by flagship phones like the iPhone XS, the Galaxy S10, and the Pixel 3. Each one has cutting-edge design, a bounty of features, but they also come with a hefty price. For example, the Pixel 3 starts out at $800. The Galaxy S10, $900. And the iPhone X starts out at $1,000. $1,000! That's a lot of money. Okay, hey, Apple and Samsung do have more value-oriented flagships like the Galaxy S10e and the iPhone XR, but those are still $750. That is why it is undoubtedly impressive that the Moto G7 only cost $300. $300. It offers the best balance of price, design, and features pretty much of any phone you could get today. At $300, the Moto G7 costs $50 more than last year's Moto G6. And yes, that is a significant price increase. But I kind of think it's worth it for the improvements you get. And not to mention, this phone will be discounted. In fact, there's a couple websites now that offer some discounts on the Moto G7. When I first saw the Moto G7, I was taken by its dapper design. There's a modern, sleek vibe to it all. Now, where this differs from the Moto G6 is kind of two main areas. One is you have this dewdrop notch in the top here, and on the back, there's the fingerprint reader, which is peppy and fast. Also, I kind of like how Motorola put their logo in there. I think it's pretty cute. So, there is Gorilla Glass 3 on the front and back of this phone, and it makes this thing look premium. But this phone deserves an award for the phone that is easiest to smudge, because this thing right now looks like it came out of an episode of CSI, or Law & Order, or NCIS. You get the idea. Chicago PD, Dick Wolf, Chung Chung, crime scene. Get it? Yeah, let's move on. Hey, overall, the design of the Moto G7 is quite appealing. Aside from the Motorola name here on the bottom, it's kind of an obvious touch. But they did add IP54 water and dust resistance, so that's good. Now, you can't submerge this phone underwater, but you can get a little spritz on it. So, better than nothing. The Moto G7 also has a headphone jack and a USB-C port. There's a single speaker on the bottom, which was serviceable, but sounded sometimes tinny. There are dual rear cameras, a 12-megapixel main camera, and a 5-megapixel depth camera. The 6.2-inch screen seems gigantic compared to the 5.7-inch screen on the Moto G6. What is bonkers is that Motorola was able to add so much more screen real estate without making the body much bigger. The display has nice contrast and looks good in most situations. It definitely won't wow you when you compare it to screens on mid-range or premium phones. The corners on the screen are much more pronounced than the tiny ones on the Moto G6. And while most apps adapt to them, sometimes, like when I played PUBG, the game would fill the bottom two corners of the display, but have a black bar across the top. It's a little odd, and if you're sensitive about such things, it will drive you nuts. The Moto G7 runs Android 9 Pie with light customizations. Overall, the experience is simple and straightforward, and that's what makes the Moto G7 so appealing. That and, well, all the cool shortcuts Motorola adds to the phone. Twist your wrist twice to open the camera, which is my favorite way to open a camera on any phone. You lay the phone face down to trigger Do Not Disturb mode. There's one button nav which adds a small bar on the bottom of the screen that you can tap, hold, or swipe to trigger different actions. There's also an always on screen. You just hover your hand over the display to see the time. The combo here is not going to compete with the likes of the Pixel 3 or the iPhone XS or even something like the OnePlus 6T. The Moto G7's camera experience is basically a C-, and that is not a knock. For $300, I get portrait mode, slow motion video, and 4K video, and the photo image quality is decent. That's pretty impressive. Portrait mode has a nice, realistic looking background blur, though shots can feel a bit soft. Photos taken in low light appear very painterly with all the noise correction the Moto G7 applies. If you're big on using your phone to shoot video, the G7 might not be for you. In good light, videos looked okay, but suffered from a limited dynamic range. If you want to record a fun moment with friends or something adorable your child does, this phone is more than capable. But here is an interesting wrinkle. If you're savvy enough to load the Google Camera APK, also known as Gcam, which is essentially the camera app on the Pixel 3, you will be rewarded. The results are eye-opening. Photos taken with the Google Camera app on the Moto G7 have more detail, dynamic range, and better color. They're still not as good as the Pixel 3, but using this app takes the Moto G7 camera from C- to a solid B. The selfie camera is good and has a fun auto smile setting where it won't take the photo until everyone in the frame smiles, up to 5 people. There is also a portrait mode on the selfie camera, and it yielded decent results. The Snapdragon 632 processor makes the Moto G7 much faster than the Moto G6. In everyday use, I never notice any lags or animation stutters or apps having problems opening. It just worked. I played a few games in the Moto G7, including Alto's Odyssey and PUBG, in low quality mode. I was impressed with how well the phone handled the graphics in Alto's Odyssey, and the fact that after playing about an hour's worth of PUBG, that the phone was barely warm. The Moto G7's battery lasted 3 hours longer than the Moto G6 did in our tests. Even though it doesn't have wireless charging, the Moto G7 has turbocharging. At the end of the day, the Motorola Moto G7 has a slick design, decent dual cameras, excellent battery life, and runs a near stock version of Android 9 Pie, all of which make this budget phone worth every penny.